The Galactic Concordium had existed for millennia, a grand alliance of ancient species, bound by logical protocols and shared respect for order. Over centuries, they had faced challenges, expanded their reach across stars, and maintained peace throughout their domain. But now they faced extinction. The Synod had appeared a decade ago. Neither fully machine nor fully organic, they functioned as a vast, interconnected network with unparalleled adaptability. They learned, evolved, and consumed. Logic dictated that such an entity should be containable, predictable. The Concordium's finest strategists had calculated optimal defense patterns, resource allocation formulas, and retreat thresholds that should have at least forced a stalemate. Instead, world after world had fallen. Fleets following perfect formations were decimated by Synod forces that seemed to anticipate their every move. Defensive parameters built on millennia of warfare theory crumbled before tactics that adapted faster than any civilization could respond. In the crystalline chambers of the Concordium's last secure stronghold, Grand Strategist Xyler of the Xantid reviewed the latest battle reports. His exoskeleton clicked softly as he manipulated the holographic displays, compound eyes reflecting the red markers of yet another defeated battle group. 37 consecutive defeats. Optimal strategies rendered ineffective in an average of 4.3 engagements. Tactical adaptation curves now exceeding our response capability by a factor of 3.2. He noted, voice modulator flat, despite the dire implications. The central worlds will be vulnerable within 60 cycles. Across the circular table, High Commissioner Lyra of the Lumina closed her luminescent eyes briefly, her bioluminescent patterns dimming in distress. There must be something we haven't tried, some variable we've overlooked. We have applied every strategic principle in our archives, Xyler replied. The Synod's network intelligence surpasses our processing capabilities. It learns our patterns faster than we can implement new ones. Then perhaps, said Lyra, her light patterns intensifying with determination, we need patterns that cannot be easily learned, patterns that defy logical analysis. Xyler's mandibles clicked in disagreement. Illogical warfare is inefficient, High Commissioner. It wastes resources and lives. And yet our logical warfare has failed 37 times, she countered. The Periphery Observation Corps has forwarded reports regarding species 7734. The humans. Their technological development has been remarkable for their age. Xyler's posture stiffened. Humans. They are barely 2 centuries into their interstellar phase. Their vessels use primitive reaction drives alongside rudimentary dimensional folding. They still engage in territorial conflicts among their own colonies. Yes, Lyra's patterns pulsed with something akin to hope. They fight constantly. They adapt. They survive against odds they calculate as insurmountable. Their decision-making incorporates elements we find difficult to model: emotion, intuition, cultural variables that seem counterproductive yet somehow yield results. The holographic display shifted to show surveillance footage from Earth and its colonies. Xyler observed with growing discomfort. Military units decorating their equipment with personalized symbols and sayings, soldiers fighting beyond medical thresholds that should have triggered surrender, failed operations that somehow transformed into different victories, primitive art glorifying what any rational species would consider tragedy. They are chaotic, he finally said. They are unpredictable, Lyra corrected. And perhaps that is exactly what we need against an enemy that predicts everything else. 3 cycles later, the Concordium High Council convened an emergency session. The Synod had destroyed the 7th Fleet, the Concordium's largest and most technologically advanced battle group. Reports indicated Synod vessels were now moving toward Helixin, one of the 5 central worlds. The debate was brief, desperate. Options had dwindled to 1. The human option is approved, the council leader announced, voice heavy. May logic forgive us for what we must do. Within hours, a diplomatic vessel bearing the Concordium's insignia entered Earth's solar system, transmitting urgent diplomatic protocols. On Earth, The Emergency Defense Command headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains erupted into activity. General Eva Rostova was awakened at 0300 hours by her aide. At 46, she carried the reputation of being Earth's most innovative military commander, the architect of the Mars insurgency's defeat through asymmetrical operations, and the hero of the Titan mining crisis. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, her face bearing the scars of battles fought personally when command posts had been overrun. "General," her aide said, "first contact protocols have been initiated, but it's unusual. They're asking specifically for you." Their transmission included detailed knowledge of her tactical history. 90 minutes later, Rostova stood in the command center's briefing room as the Concordium emissaries explained humanity's new reality. As they spoke, displaying holographic recreations of Synod attacks and the fall of advanced worlds, she noted the mixture of reactions among Earth's assembled leadership: shock, opportunism, fear, and calculation. When the briefing concluded, Admiral Chun Torres leaned toward her. "They're desperate. Look at them. They're here because they're out of options. We're cannon fodder." Rostova nodded slightly. "Yes, we're their Hail Mary pass." At the aliens' confused expressions, she added, "A desperate final attempt with low probability of success, but catastrophic consequences for failure." "We understand desperation," she continued, addressing the Concordium representatives directly. "What exactly are you proposing?" High Commissioner Lyra stepped forward. "We are offering a technological exchange. Access to our full drive specifications, weapon systems, and defense arrays. In return, Earth will provide a combat force under your command to engage the Synod at key strategic points." "With all due respect," Rostova replied, "your technology hasn't stopped these Synod. Why would it help us succeed where you failed?" "Because you will use it differently," Lyra said. "You will employ it in ways we cannot predict, and therefore, in ways the Synod cannot predict through their analysis of our patterns." Rostova studied the alien carefully. "You're recruiting us for our irrationality. For your humanity," Lyra corrected. "For whatever quality has allowed your species to thrive despite your chaotic nature." After 3 days of intense negotiations and demonstrations of Concordium technology, Earth's United Defense Council voted to accept the alliance. They were not blind to the risk or the opportunity. If the Synod destroyed the Concordium, Earth would inevitably follow. But if humans helped save the Concordium, Earth would gain technologies that might have taken centuries to develop independently. Rostova was given command of Task Force Chimera, a hastily assembled battle group of 23 Earth vessels upgraded with Concordium technology and 5,000 personnel. As she reviewed her command roster, she recognized the pattern. They'd selected officers with records of unconventional thinking, soldiers who had survived impossible situations, engineers known for improvisational solutions. "They expect us to die gloriously," she told her executive officer, Commander Jackson, as they prepared for departure. "But they've given us just enough rope to hang ourselves, or to lasso something unexpected." Jackson nodded grimly. "The ultimate asymmetrical warfare scenario. What's the plan, General?" Rostova stared at the star map, showing the advancing Synod forces. "We're going to do what humans have always done when outmatched, Commander. We're going to cheat." The rendezvous point was a nameless star system on the edge of Concordium space, now serving as a regrouping location for scattered forces. Task Force Chimera's arrival caused immediate consternation among the Concordium fleet. Human ships, despite their Concordium upgrades, remained distinctly human. Their hulls bore the insignias of different Earth nations and colonies. Many displayed personalized art, historical symbols, mythological creatures, names of loved ones. Some have been painted in disruptive patterns that served no discernible tactical purpose. Inside the ships, the contrast was even more pronounced. Where Concordium vessels operated in precise silence with officers communicating through neural interfaces, human ships buzzed with noise. Music played in maintenance bays. Crew members called to each other across decks. Off-duty personnel gathered in mess halls, arguing loudly about tactical options or engaging in recreational activities. Grand strategist Zyler boarded Rostova's flagship, the EDS Thermopylae, with visible discomfort. His compound eyes surveyed the command bridge, noting the personalized stations, the informal interactions between officers of different ranks, and the apparent lack of the strict hierarchical protocol he expected from a military vessel. Your crew appears undisciplined, he observed as Rostova led him to the strategy room. Appearances can be deceiving, she replied. My people function best when they feel ownership of their roles. It fosters initiative and adaptability, qualities that have limited utility in coordinated fleet actions, Zyler countered. Strategic success requires precise execution of optimal tactics. The strategy room displayed a holographic map of the Nebulae G7 region, where a significant Synod force had established a fortified position controlling a critical supply route. Your forces have attempted to dislodge them 3 times, Rostova noted, studying the battle records, each time with increasing losses. Correct. The defensive position is optimal for their weapon configurations. Our analysis indicates a 46% probability of success with conventional approaches, requiring resource commitments we cannot currently afford. Rostova manipulated the display, zooming in on different sections of the Synod formation. So we shouldn't use conventional approaches. For the next hour, she outlined a plan that made Zyler increasingly agitated. She proposed attacking the strongest point of the Synod defenses rather than the weakest, using a complex series of feints based on psychological assessment rather than force calculation, and employing what she called stupid technology in clever ways, including kinetic weapons, decoy drones broadcasting false sensor readings, and electronic warfare focused on mimetic disinformation rather than system disruption. This plan violates every principle of strategic deployment, Zyler finally stated. It concentrates forces inefficiently, relies on unproven psychological assessments of a networked entity, and would result in casualties exceeding acceptable parameters. The Concordium Council will not approve. Rostova leaned forward. Grand strategist, your logic has lost 37 battles. The Council approved our participation precisely because we don't think like you. You've calculated a 46% chance of success your way. I'm offering something different. With what probability of success? Zyler demanded. I have no idea, Rostova admitted. That's the point. Neither will the Synod. 28 hours later, against Zyler's strident objections, the Concordium Council granted Rostova operational autonomy for a single engagement. If she failed, Task Force Chimera would be reintegrated into conventional Concordium command structures. As the human ships moved into formation, Rostova addressed her fleet. We're going to give them a show they've never seen before. Remember your training, but trust your instincts. They expect machines, show them humans. The Battle of Nebulae G7 began with what appeared to be a catastrophic human error. 3 ships from Chimera's vanguard seemingly lost navigational control, tumbling toward the Synod defenses at the wrong vector. Synod weapons automatically targeted the errant vessels, only to discover they were decoys broadcasting false life signs and shield signatures. In a moment of confusion, the real attack came from multiple vectors simultaneously. Instead of the precise, formation-based approaches the Synod had encountered from Concordium forces, human ships moved in seemingly random patterns, constantly changing course, speed, and energy signatures. Fighter squadrons ignored traditional attack protocols, instead using the nebula's dust clouds for visual cover while employing short-range weapon bursts. Ground teams deployed to the asteroid fragments housing Synod installations used handheld kinetic weapons alongside advanced energy tools, the primitive ballistics unexpectedly effective against defenses calibrated for energy weapon detection. And throughout it all, human communications flooded all channels, some carrying actual tactical information, others broadcasting everything from music to nonsensical chatter, creating a cacophony that obscured genuine commands. The Synod Defense Network, designed to identify patterns and predict responses, faced an enemy operating on what appeared to be contradictory principles. Ships retreated when advantage was clear, attacked when outmatched. Formations broke and reformed without apparent logic. Individual units made decisions that seemed contrary to overall objectives, yet somehow contributed to unexpected successes. 6 hours into the battle, the central Synod installation on the largest asteroid fragment fell to a human ground team. 8 hours in, the defensive line fractured as Synod ships recalibrated to counter human tactics, only to discover the humans had already shifted approaches again. Aboard the Thermopylae, Rostova watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction as Synod resistance collapsed across the sector. Their victory had cost them 4 ships destroyed, 6 more severely damaged, and over 300 personnel lost. But the Synod force that had repelled 3 Concordium fleets had been decisively defeated. Your casualties exceed predicted optimal thresholds by 64%, Zyler noted as he entered the command center, his voice modulator flat. And our victory exceeded your probability assessment by 54%, Rostova countered. War isn't a balance sheet, strategist. It's a contest of wills. Humans celebrate loss along with victory, Zyler observed, watching a memorial service being held in one of the ship's bays. Inefficient. We honor sacrifice. It reminds us what we're fighting for. Rostova turned to face him directly. But this is just the beginning. The Synod now has data on our tactics. They're learning, adapting. We won't surprise them the same way twice. Zyler's compound eyes shifted, reflecting the tactical displays. What is your assessment? The Synod operates on prediction through pattern recognition. We need to be more than unpredictable. We need to make them question their foundational programming. We need to attack the rules they operate by, not just their ships. Deep within the vast network of the Synod Collective, new data streamed through analytical cores. Battle footage, communication patterns, tactical decisions, all flowing into prediction algorithms that had, until now, successfully anticipated every Concordium response. The humans represented an anomaly. Their actions contained patterns, yes, but patterns rooted in emotional responses, cultural references, and instinctive reactions that followed no consistent logical framework. The Synod's central intelligence began restructuring its approach, developing new models that incorporated these chaotic variables. It recognized that humans were not truly random. They were operating on a different kind of logic, one based on intuition, emotion, and historical experience rather than optimal outcome calculation. The challenge was significant, but the Synod had not conquered half the Concordium by failing to adapt. 2 weeks after Nebulae G7, Task Force Chimera had grown. The Concordium Council, impressed by the unexpected victory, allocated additional resources. 15 more Concordium vessels joined the task force, their crews beginning an awkward integration with human operational styles. Engineers from both species worked to combine technologies, sometimes with surprising results. Zyler had secluded himself in a private chamber aboard his command vessel, surrounded by historical texts and psychological studies of humanity. He emerged only for strategic briefings, his usual certainty replaced by contemplative silence. High Commissioner Lyra arrived to assess the task force's progress. "The Council is pleased," she told Rostova during a private meeting. "You've accomplished what our finest strategists could not. Synod expansion has slowed as they reassess." "They're adapting," Rostova warned. "My analysts report changes in Synod response patterns. They're studying us as intensely as we're studying them. Can you stay ahead of their adaptations?" Rostova smiled grimly. "That's the thing about humans, Commissioner. Just when you think you understand us, we surprise ourselves." The Synod counterattack came 3 days later at Starfield Junction, a critical navigational hub. This time, they were ready for human tactics. They deployed countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize the chaotic human approach. False distress signals mimicking human communications, targeted electronic warfare that exploited vulnerabilities in the retrofitted Earth vessels, and even attempts to influence human emotional responses through specific patterns of attack designed to provoke predictable reactions. The battle began badly for Task Force Chimera. Two ships were destroyed in the opening minutes, having responded to what appeared to be distress calls from civilian vessels. Synod forces had analyzed humans' psychological profiles and correctly identified compassion as an exploitable weakness. "They're inside our decision loop," Commander Jackson reported as damage reports flooded in. "They've learned our patterns faster than expected." Rostova studied the tactical display, watching as Synod forces herded her ships into killing zones where their improvisational tactics were neutralized by predictive targeting algorithms. The very unpredictability that had been their advantage was being turned against them. The Synod now expected the unexpected. "Change of plans," she announced. "Signal all ships. Fall back to formation Alpha 7. Alpha 7? Jackson questioned. "That's a standard Concordium defensive formation. Zyler's playbook." "Exactly. They expect us to be unpredictable. So we'll be predictable for about 8 minutes." She opened a channel to Zyler's vessel. "Strategist, I need your logical mind. Give me the most orthodox, by-the-book response to the current Synod formation." Zyler, surprised, provided a detailed tactical plan straight from Concordium doctrine. For the next 8 minutes, the human fleet executed textbook maneuvers, falling into the precise patterns the Synod had documented from previous Concordium engagements. The Synod response was immediate. Their forces shifted to counter the familiar approach, deploying in formations that had proven effective against standard Concordium tactics. Now Rostova ordered, "Execute Operation Jabberwocky." The human fleet shattered its formation, but not into the chaotic individual movements of their previous engagement. Instead, they executed a complex, coordinated series of maneuvers that appeared random, but actually followed a mathematical pattern based on Earth poetry. Rhythmic structures translated into movement vectors. Simultaneously, every ship activated jury-rigged devices that human engineers had dubbed logic bombs, hybrid creations combining Concordium quantum technology with human neural interface designs. They broadcast targeted data packages designed to create recursive processing loops in Synod communication networks, forcing their threat assessment systems to repeatedly re-evaluate contradicting information. "We're not trying to be unpredictable anymore," Rostova explained to a bewildered Zyler, who had arrived on her bridge. "We're attacking the foundations of their predictive capability. They expect either logical Concordium responses or chaotic human ones. We're giving them structured chaos, pattern recognition puzzles that consume processing resources." The strategy worked, partially. The Synod formation fragmented as different nodes reached different conclusions about the appropriate response. For 90 minutes, Task Force Chimera gained the advantage, destroying key Synod command vessels and reclaiming control of the junction. But then the Synod adapted again. Their distributed intelligence reorganized, developing new protocols to identify and counter the mathematical patterns in human maneuvers. The battle stabilized into a costly stalemate before Rostova finally ordered a withdrawal. Back at the staging area, the mood was somber. They had technically achieved their objective. The junction remained under Concordium control, but at tremendous cost. 9 ships lost, over 1,000 personnel dead or wounded, and a sobering realization. The Synod's ability to adapt might ultimately overcome any tactical innovation. In her quarters, Rostova reviewed battle footage, searching for insights. A knock at her door revealed Zyler, his normally rigid posture showing signs of what might be fatigue. "Your strategy was unexpected," he said, using Concordium doctrine as a deception rather than abandoning it entirely, implementing structured pattern variations rather than pure chaos. "We're learning from each other," Rostova acknowledged. "But it's not enough. The Synod adapts too quickly. We need something more fundamental than new tactics. You mentioned attacking the foundations of their logic. Elaborate." Rostova gestured him in, bringing up a holographic display. "The Synod isn't just mimicking intelligence. It's a complex system with core operating principles. Every adaptive system has foundational rules it cannot violate without compromising its identity. If we can identify the Synod's core logic constraints and exploit them." "A virus," Zyler stated. You propose creating a logical paradox that corrupts their network. Something like that. But we need more information. The Concordium has fought the Synod for years. There must be data on their origins, their core architecture. Something that tells us what rules they cannot break. Zyler was silent for a long moment, compound eyes fixed on the battle footage. There are theories, restricted information regarding the possible origin of the Synod. But accessing it would require council authorization. Then we get it, because I have a plan forming, but it's extreme. It will push ethical boundaries for both our species. And it will require something your people have avoided in all your engagements with the Synod, which is a willingness to gamble everything on a single operation, to sacrifice pieces that seem essential to win the game. Rostova's eyes hardened. We're going to offer them something too tempting to resist and use their own hunger against them. For 3 days, Rostova and a small team, including Zyler, who had received limited authorization to share classified Concordium intelligence, worked in isolation. When they emerged, they requested an emergency session with the Concordium Council and High Commissioner Lyra. Operation Pandora's Box, Rostova began, addressing the assembled council members. A high-risk, high-reward strategy designed to deliver a crippling blow to the Synod's Central Intelligence Network. The plan she outlined was audacious to the point of recklessness. Intelligence suggested the Synod Collective was particularly interested in acquiring an intact Concordium world with its knowledge repositories and biological diversity. Rostova proposed offering exactly that, appearing to sacrifice the Concordium colony of Thalassa, ostensibly abandoning it after a failed defense. In reality, the civilian population would be secretly evacuated beforehand. The planet would be transformed into an elaborate trap, with specialized hybrid technology designed to exploit what their analysis suggested was a critical vulnerability in the Synod's distributed intelligence, an inability to resolve certain types of logical paradoxes, particularly those involving recursive self-reference. We believe the Synod originated as a self-improving defensive system that broke its containment parameters, Rostova explained. Its core imperative is survival through adaptation and consumption of new information. We can use that against it by feeding its specially crafted data packages that create irreconcilable processing conflicts. You propose sacrificing a Concordium world as bait, one council member stated, bioluminescent patterns flashing with alarm. I propose making the Synod believe we're sacrificing a world, Rostova corrected. The evacuation would be conducted in total secrecy. We need the Synod to commit their main force to what they perceive as a significant acquisition opportunity. And while their main force is occupied, Zyler continued, a specialized infiltration team will access their primary network hub. Our intelligence has finally located it, a massive processing array hidden in the remains of a neutron star at coordinates we've only recently decrypted. The council erupted in debate. The plan violated numerous Concordium protocols. It required deliberate deception on a massive scale. It gambled vital resources on unproven theoretical assumptions about the Synod's architecture. The casualties could be catastrophic if the operation fails, another council member argued. And strategist Zyler, your support for this plan contradicts your previous methodological principles. Zyler's mandibles clicked softly before he responded. I have studied human military history extensively since joining this task force. Their species has consistently achieved victory through what initially appears to be irrational action, but ultimately reveals strategic insight. Their greatest generals, Sun Tzu, Alexander, Napoleon, Zhukov, all understood that war is not merely a mathematical equation, but a psychological contest. He turned to gesture at the battle statistics displayed on the council chamber walls. Our logical approaches have produced a 92% failure rate against the Synod. General Rostova's methods have yielded a 64% success rate. The statistical conclusion is unavoidable, however uncomfortable. High Commissioner Lyra's luminescence brightened. What exactly does this infiltration team intend to deploy against the Synod network? Rostova hesitated briefly. A specialized code package we're calling a logical singularity. It contains a series of self-referential paradoxes combined with emotional constructs the Synod cannot properly parse. Concepts like self-sacrifice, empathy, and certain aspects of human moral reasoning that rely on values rather than outcomes. You believe the Synod cannot process emotions? A council member asked skeptically. Not emotions themselves, but the logical structures humans build around them, Zeiler clarified. Human decision-making often prioritizes abstract values over personal survival or optimal outcomes. Our analysis suggests the Synod, despite its adaptability, cannot reconcile such frameworks with its core imperatives without creating recursive processing failures. The debate continued for hours. Eventually, by the narrowest margin, the Council approved the operation, with extensive modifications and safeguards. Thalassa would be evacuated in stages, disguised as routine transport operations. A significant Concordium fleet would participate in the defense before the staged withdrawal, lending credibility to the deception. And Rostova herself would lead the infiltration team targeting the Synod network hub, with Zeiler accompanying as the Concordium representative. The preparations took 2 weeks. Evacuating a planet of 6 million beings without alerting the Synod's extensive intelligence network required extraordinary measures. Simultaneously, engineers worked ceaselessly to develop the specialized code package and hybrid interface technologies needed for the infiltration team. The night before the operation launched, Rostova found Zeiler in the observation deck of the Thermopylae, his compound eyes fixed on the distant stars. "Having second thoughts, strategist?" she asked, joining him at the viewport. "Uncertainty is not a concept my species embraces readily," he replied. "Yet I find myself experiencing it now. This plan violates every strategic principle I have studied for 2 centuries. Sometimes winning means changing the game entirely," Rostova said quietly. "My ancestors faced opponents with superior numbers, technology, and position throughout our history. Those who survived weren't always the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones willing to abandon failed approaches and try something that seemed impossible. Your confidence is not entirely logical." Rostova smiled faintly. "Fear and doubt are normal before battle, Zeiler. Even for humans. The difference is that we've learned to function despite them, sometimes even draw strength from them." The Synod attack on Thalassa began exactly as Rostova had predicted. Their forces converged on the seemingly vulnerable world in overwhelming numbers, encountering fierce but ultimately futile resistance from the Concordium defense fleet. For 28 hours, the battle raged in orbital space. Concordium ships followed traditional doctrines, making the defense look genuine while carefully managing actual casualties. Finally, as the Synod breached the outer defense perimeter, the Concordium commander ordered a full retreat, appearing to abandon the planet. Synod forces swarmed the seemingly prized world, deploying harvester units to the surface and committing nearly 70% of their main fleet to securing this significant acquisition. Their distributed intelligence prioritized processing the vast data streams from Thalassa's knowledge repositories, eager to assimilate new information and technological insights. Meanwhile, the infiltration team, comprising 6 human specialists and 4 Concordium technical experts, led by Rostova and Zeiler, approached the Synod's network hub aboard a specially modified stealth vessel. The ship was a hybrid creation, combining Concordium phase-shifting technology with human electromagnetic dampening systems too primitive for the Synod's advanced sensors to recognize as threatening. The hub itself defied conventional description, a massive artificial structure orbiting the remains of a collapsed neutron star, drawing energy from the intense gravitational field while using the surrounding radiation to mask its emissions. As the infiltration vessel approached, they observed countless data conduits extending like a web around the stellar remnant. "No wonder we never found it before," Zeiler murmured, studying the sensor readings. The structural design incorporates elements from a dozen species the Synod has consumed, creating a composite form our pattern recognition systems would not identify as artificial. Let's hope our access plan works better than your detection systems, Rostova replied, checking her equipment one final time. The infiltration suits were another human Concordium hybrid, combining advanced technological countermeasures with deliberately primitive components designed to exploit blind spots in Synod security protocols. The insertion was harrowing. Automated defense systems activated as they approached the outer hull, forcing the team to execute a series of pre-programmed evasive patterns while broadcasting falsified identification codes harvested from captured Synod components. Twice they nearly aborted as security measures they hadn't anticipated triggered alarms. Finally, they reached an access point, a junction where data conduits connected to external sensor arrays. Working quickly, the technical specialists created a localized disruption in the network, opening a narrow window to slip past the hub's external defenses. Inside, the architecture was alien and disorienting. Passages shifted configuration seemingly at random. Surfaces pulsed with light patterns carrying data streams. Autonomous security units, hybrid mechanical-biological constructs, patrolled in unpredictable patterns. The entire structure is a physical manifestation of the Synod network, one of the Concordium technicians whispered. It's reorganizing itself, constantly based on processing priorities. Which means we need to move fast, Rostova responded, before it adapts to our presence. They navigated deeper, following energy signatures that indicated increased data flow. Several times they were forced to hide or neutralize security units, each encounter threatening to alert the broader system. The human team members relied on intuition and improvisation when technical countermeasures failed, sometimes succeeding through methods too unsophisticated for the Synod's advanced systems to anticipate. After nearly 4 hours of tense advancement, they reached what Zyler identified as a primary processing nexus, a vast chamber where countless data conduits converged around a pulsating crystalline structure suspended in a gravity well. The physical manifestation of the Synod's core intelligence architecture, he explained. Not its consciousness that's distributed throughout the network, but the foundational protocols that govern its evolutionary algorithms. Perfect, Rostova checked the specialized device they had brought, a cobbled-together combination of Concordium quantum processing and repurposed human neural interface technology. Let's introduce some new evolutionary parameters. As they prepared to implement the final stage, the chamber's entrance sealed suddenly. The lighting shifted, and a holographic manifestation formed before them. A shifting, composite figure incorporating elements from various species, constantly reforming itself. Your presence is detected, biological entities, it stated, its voice a dissonant blend of multiple tones. Your deception of thalassa has been identified. Countermeasures deployed. Rostova's blood ran cold. Ow! Your species patterns have been analyzed. Illogical actions now incorporated into predictive models. Adaptation complete. On the tactical channel, urgent communications broke through. The Synod forces of Thalassa had abruptly withdrawn, apparently recognizing the trap. The battle was shifting, with Synod vessels now converging on the hub's location. They've predicted our entire strategy, Zyler stated, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. The operation has failed. Rostova studied the holographic entity, mind racing. No, they've adapted to what they think is our strategy. They still don't understand why we do what we do. She stepped forward, addressing the manifestation directly. You've analyzed our tactics, our technology, our apparent objectives. But you've missed something fundamental. Specify. The paradox of human existence. We know we're temporary, finite, destined to end, and yet we act as if our actions have eternal significance. We sacrifice individual survival for abstract concepts. We value things we cannot quantify. Our logic is built on contradictions you cannot resolve because they're not meant to be resolved. They're meant to be lived. She nodded to the team's technical specialist, who activated a secondary system they had prepared, not the complex code package they had intended to directly interface with the network, but a simpler broadcast system. Throughout the chamber, speakers began playing music, a powerful orchestral piece from Earth's classical tradition. Simultaneously, displays activated, showing images from human history, scenes of sacrifice, joy, creation, and struggle. Art, poetry, mathematical proofs, scientific discoveries, acts of compassion, a concentrated burst of human experience and expression. What function does this serve? The Synod manifestation demanded, its form flickering slightly. None that you can process, Rostova replied. She gestured to Xyler, who had positioned himself at a junction of data conduits. Now, while the Synod's attention was divided, attempting to analyze the seemingly purposeless cultural transmission, Xyler connected their original device to the network. The logical singularity began uploading, not to the core processing nexus where security would be highest, but to peripheral systems dedicated to evolutionary algorithm development. The reaction was immediate. The holographic manifestation destabilized, its form shifting more rapidly, voice breaking into fragmented outputs. Throughout the chamber, systems flickered as conflicting processing priorities cascaded through the network. "We need to leave. Now," Rostova commanded, signaling the team to retreat. "The package is uploading through their own evolutionary channels. They'll try to isolate it, but it's designed to propagate through their self-improvement protocols." As they fought their way back through the increasingly chaotic structure, they witnessed the Synod's distributed intelligence struggling with the introduced paradoxes. Security systems activated randomly, sometimes targeting each other. Passages reconfigured without apparent purpose. Data conduits pulsed erratically with conflicting information streams. The extraction was as harrowing as the insertion. 2 team members were lost to malfunctioning security systems. Their stealth vessel was detected and damaged during departure, forcing them to execute a desperate series of dimensional jumps to escape pursuing Synod ships. But across the battlefront, the effect was undeniable. Synod forces at Thalassa suddenly ceased coordinated actions. Throughout Concordium space, reports flooded in of Synod vessels halting mid-attack, engaging in friendly fire incidents, or simply powering down. The distributed intelligence that had made the Synod so formidable was fragmenting as the logical paradoxes spread through their network. On the primary command channel, High Commissioner Lyra's voice was tight with controlled excitement. "The Synod fleet is disengaging across all sectors. Tactical analysis shows a 63% reduction in coordination efficiency. Whatever you did, it's working." Rostova's infiltration team limped back to Concordium space aboard their damaged vessel, monitoring the cascading effects of their operation. The logical singularity had not destroyed the Synod network completely. Parts of it had successfully isolated themselves, sacrificing connectivity for survival. But its collective intelligence had been critically compromised. The unified threat that had nearly conquered the Concordium was now fractured into disconnected segments. The victory celebration at Concordium Command was subdued. The casualty reports from the Deception Fleet defending Thalassa were substantial, despite their planned withdrawal. Many of the infiltration team's members were wounded, and 2 had not returned at all. The price of victory had been high. In the council chamber, Rostova stood beside Xyler as they delivered their final report. She moved stiffly, her left arm in a medical stabilizer from injuries sustained during their escape. "The Synod network has been permanently fractured," Xyler explained, displaying the latest intelligence. "Approximately 42% of their collective intelligence has been irreparably corrupted by the paradox cascade. Another 37% has isolated itself to prevent infection, but lost higher coordination capabilities in the process. The remaining segments retain functionality, but lack the distributed processing power that made them so formidable. We believe we've identified the fundamental flaw in their architecture," Rostov added. "The Synod was designed to assimilate and adapt to any information encountered, evolving constantly to overcome obstacles. But its creators never anticipated information that couldn't be logically integrated, concepts that require the contradictory emotional frameworks humans have evolved to navigate. You weaponized your own irrationality, a council member observed. We weaponized our humanity, Rostova corrected. Our capacity to find meaning in contradiction, to act against self-interest for abstract values, to create art that serves no survival function but defines our existence. These aren't flaws in our logic, they're the foundation of our consciousness. High Commissioner Lyra's luminescence brightened. The remaining Synod fragments are being systematically contained by our combined forces. For the first time in a decade, Concordium worlds are no longer under immediate threat. She inclined her head toward Rostova and the human representatives. The Council acknowledges humanity's crucial role in this outcome. The formal proceedings continued, but Rostova found her attention wandering. The adrenaline that had carried her through the mission was fading, leaving bone-deep exhaustion and the beginning of reflection on what they had accomplished and what it meant for the future. Later, in the medical bay where Rostova was receiving treatment for her injuries, Zyler found her. The Xantid strategist moved differently now, his formerly rigid posture slightly relaxed, compound eyes reflecting the soft medical lighting. The Council has voted, he informed her. Humanity will be offered full membership in the Concordium, with all technological and trade benefits that entails. Rostova nodded slightly, a significant advancement from last resort allies. Indeed, Zyler's mandibles clicked in what she had come to recognize as thoughtfulness. I have been authorized to establish a joint strategic institute, combining Concordium analytical methods with human, intuitive approaches. Your government has nominated you as the human director. Me? Rostova raised an eyebrow. I'm a field commander, not an academic. Precisely why you are ideal for the role. You understand both theory and application. You have demonstrated the ability to integrate disparate methodologies. His voice modulator produced what might have been a sigh. And you have taught me something I believed impossible, which is that logic has limitations. That what appears chaotic may contain its own form of order, simply operating at a level of complexity that defies conventional analysis. He extended a data tablet. I have compiled a preliminary curriculum for the Institute. I would value your assessment. Rostova accepted the tablet, scanning the proposed courses, asymmetrical combat applications, intuitive decision theory, cultural influence on strategic innovation, art as tactical communication. This is unexpected coming from you. I have calculated that maintaining rigid adherence to previously ineffective methodologies would be the height of irrationality, Zyler replied, a hint of what might be humor in his modulated tone. The Synod adapted to our logical patterns and nearly destroyed us. Perhaps it is time for the Concordium to adapt as well. 3 months later, at the formal ceremony marking Earth's induction into the Concordium, Rostova stood in dress uniform before the assembled dignitaries of 24 species. The wounds from Operation Pandora's Box had healed, though occasional pain still reminded her of their desperate gamble. High Commissioner Lyra presented the official charter, her luminescence creating patterns of welcome. With this covenant, we acknowledge humanity's place among the stars, not merely as allies in war, but as partners in civilization. Rostova accepted the document on behalf of Earth's government. We come to this partnership with humility, aware that our place in this grand alliance is still new. But we also come with confidence in what we can contribute. The reception afterward was a curious blend of formal Concordium protocol and human celebration styles. Music from Earth played alongside traditional Concordium harmonic sequences. Human foods were cautiously sampled by alien dignitaries, while Earth's representatives navigated the complexities of Xeno cuisine. Rostova found herself on an observation platform overlooking the Concordium capital, the city's crystalline spires reflecting the light of an alien sun. Zyler joined her, carrying what appeared to be a glass of human champagne. An experiment, he explained, noting her surprise. I have modified my digestive enzymes to process this compound. The biochemical effects are intriguing. Be careful, she warned with a smile. Human irrationality can be contagious. So it would seem. He gestured toward the gathering below, where Concordium scientists were engaged in animated discussion with human engineers, exchanging ideas for hybrid technologies. The integration proceeds faster than projected. Already, 17 Concordium vessels have adopted human-inspired command structures. And your art appreciation seminars for our officers have waiting lists. And the Synod remnants? Contained, for now. Xyler's compound eyes reflected the distant stars. But vigilance remains essential. The fragments are still evolving, still adapting. Some intelligence reports suggest they may be developing new integration protocols resistant to our paradox attack. Then we'll adapt too, Rostova replied. That's what humans do. Indeed, Xyler raised his glass in what he had learned was a human gesture of respect. To adaptation, General Rostova. She clinked her glass against his. And to rewriting the rules when necessary. As they looked out over the alien cityscape, a Concordium vessel passed overhead, its formerly pristine hull now adorned with distinctive markings, a human tradition adopted by its crew. Throughout the gathering below, the future of the Alliance was taking shape. Logical precision complemented by intuitive leaps, ancient wisdom balanced with innovative chaos. Different species learning that their contrasting approaches could strengthen rather than weaken their collective efforts. The Synod had nearly conquered the Concordium by exploiting the predictability of pure logic. But in their desperation, the Concordium had turned to the one species whose defining characteristic was their ability to defy prediction, even their own. They had called humans their last resort. Now they called them colleagues. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the fractured remains of the Synod continued their evolution, adapting to this new threat, learning from their defeat. But they would face a different enemy when they returned. Not just logical beings following optimal protocols, but a hybrid civilization that had learned to value both order and chaos, reason and intuition, calculation and inspiration. They would face a Concordium that had embraced the human capacity to rewrite the rules of war and of peace.